Hi guys, happy Monday and welcome to week 8 of At Home Learning. We are back with our book Chasing Vermeer, written by Blue Balliett and illustrated by Brett Helquist. This is part 10 of our video series, so if you have missed the parts before this, go ahead and click down to my YouTube page, and I have a playlist of all of the Chasing Vermeer videos that you should listen to before this one so you can catch up. Today we are going to be starting chapter 15, which is called Murder and Hot Chocolate. The university school was buzzing the next day. Miss Hussey was not there, and word had leaked to the papers that she had been arrested the night before as a suspect in the theft. Her class was out of control. It took the substitute half the morning to stop the accusations and shouting. A suspect? She'd never help a criminal. How do you know? Maybe she was forced into it. Remember when her arm was hurt? She would have called the police right away. I know her. We all know her, dummy. What we don't know is what's going on. Somebody in this room must have called the police last night. No way. The rat is dead meat. Yeah, a memory. Even when they'd finally quieted down, the sixth graders glowered at one another suspiciously. There was clearly a traitor in the midst. The substitute handed out sheets of word problems to keep everyone busy. At lunchtime, Petra and Calder sat next to each other as usual. I'm worried that the letter I picked up in your garden was Miss Hussey's, from the thief. If it was, then she wouldn't have any proof that she'd been one of the three, and who would believe me if I said I'd found it and lost it again? Petra was pushing her grilled cheese back and forth across her plate. Before Calder could reply, Denise leaned over. Something the rest of us don't know about Petra? Something you'd like to tell the police? No more secrets now. And hanging out in Calder's garden? Really? Petra moved away angrily, bumping Denise's elbow by mistake as she picked up her lunch tray. Denise lost control of her butterscotch pudding, and it slithered down her leg. Slipping on the pudding, she lost her balance and landed heavily on the substitute teacher, who was sitting nearby. Petra smiled. Other tables began to giggle, and Denise told the substitute that Petra had pushed her. Calder and a number of kids turned on Denise, and soon they were shouting. Denise turned crimson and yelled, "I hate all of you!" The class had to stay inside during recess as punishment for bad behavior. It was a horrible day. Hyde Park continued to make the papers. The Chicago Tribune had pictures of both Mrs. Sharp and Miss Hussey on the front page the next day, as well as the happy news that Miss Hussey had received the same letter as Mrs. Sharp. Miss Hussey was released. She made a statement about having been terrified, as was Miss Sharp, to do anything about the letter. Both women were given round-the-clock police protection. There were many questions. Why would a professional thief ask an old woman and a young schoolteacher to help him or her? Why hadn't the first letter been followed by another? And who had gotten the third? Then a reporter added to what Petra and Calder already knew. Louise Sharp was the widow of Leland Sharp, a Vermeer expert who had died in Amsterdam 31 years ago. He had written to his wife that he had made a breakthrough discovery about Vermeer's work and was then silenced before he could share it. The possibility of his death being connected to a discovery about Vermeer changed everything. Mrs. Sharp could be genuinely afraid. Petra and Calder admitted to each other that she just might be innocent, or at least partly innocent. Things with Mrs. Sharp were never simple. Miss Hussey! When she returned the next day, her sixth grade class crowded around, giving her hugs and stepping on her sneakers. How was jail? Were you really scared? How come you didn't tell us that was your letter? We were so worried about you. The questions poured out, but she wouldn't talk about either the arrest or the letter. She looked happy to be back, but nervous. Every time someone dropped a book or bumped into a desk, she jumped. She glanced into the hallway a number of times, as if afraid that the policeman on duty might have left. She took down all the Vermeer posters and all of the newspaper clippings. The classroom looked bare and dismal. She asked the class what they wanted to study, but when they suggested ideas, she didn't seem to be listening. Petra thought about bringing up Charles Fort's research, but could tell it wasn't the right moment. The day after Miss Hussey came back, Petra left science class and went to her homeroom to get a book she had forgotten. She found Miss Hussey standing alone, her back to the door, talking on a cell phone. Petra took 2 steps into the room and froze. She overheard mistake? But why? It is here. But I can't do that. And then her teacher began to weep. Not wanting her to know that she had heard, Petra crept out. Petra felt suddenly outraged for Miss Hussey. She was a wonderful person. Who or what was hurting her? And were Mrs. Sharp and Miss Hussey really so protected now? Petra didn't think so. Something was very wrong with Miss Hussey. "Come on, Calder," Petra said when school ended. "Let's go someplace we don't usually go. Someplace on the campus. How about Fargo Hall? I've got money for a hot chocolate." Petra's hat was pulled down almost to her eyebrows, and her hair fanned out in a black halo around the bottom. She was walking a couple of steps ahead of Calder. "You remember what Mrs. Sharp said about people not looking carefully enough at what's around them?" "Of course," Calder said. "I think we should be careful. That's all." "What's the matter? Did something happen?" Calder was looking curiously at her. "I'll tell you when we get there." They plodded quietly through the dim afternoon light, heading 2 blocks north on University Avenue. Fargo Hall, close to a century old, had stone gargoyles and carved human heads on every turret and ledge. A tangle of leafless ivy clutched at the limestone walls. As they pulled open the heavy doors on 57th Street, there was a comforting blast of heat and student messiness. Petra bought 2 hot chocolates with whipped cream, and they headed through French doors into what looked like a giant living room. There was a fire in the fireplace, and students were scattered around in armchairs, talking quietly or reading. They sat down on huge leather chairs in a corner. "Here's what I'm thinking," Petra began. "You and I know some things other people don't. There are all the coincidences that have led us along, the possible storage places in Mrs. Sharp's house, and my feeling that the painting might be hidden behind dark wood." "Right," Calder nodded towards the walls in the room they were sitting in. "It's everywhere." "I think we need to go into high gear and start actively hunting." Petra told Calder about overhearing Miss Hussey's conversation. "I have a feeling that she may be in real danger. We may not have much time." Calder put down his cup and started running his fingers excitedly through his pentominoes. "Shh," Petra said, aware of someone glaring at them, someone in a dark armchair across the room. Calder pulled out one of the pieces. "It's the U. U for understand?" "No, that's not right. It's U for under." "Under. Maybe the painting is hidden beneath something?" "What else do we have to go on?" Petra asked. "Well, what you heard today." "It is here." Petra repeated Miss Hussey's words. "Here," said Calder. "Imagine that Miss Hussey, being adventuresome and wanting to do the right thing for art, did help the thief. Or how about this? Imagine that she and Mrs. Sharp are working together. They do know each other. Imagine Miss Hussey hid the painting and Mrs. Sharp knows where it is. Imagine they picked a spot they both know. What would be a logical place?" "Maybe it's also U for university school. What a brilliant place to hide something around hundreds of kids." Calder was jabbing the U pentomino into the arm of his chair for emphasis. "Great. And imagine that we found the painting, and no one ever had to know that Miss Hussey was involved. Except you and me, and we would never tell. We'd be rescuing all 3 of them, the lady, Miss Hussey, and Mrs. Sharp." "How about the 3rd person? The person who got letter number 3. Petra glanced over to see that the armchair in the corner was empty. "The dark horse. The difficult piece in any puzzle that doesn't seem to be there at all until you need it." Calder popped the U back into his pocket. Both tried not to get too excited. Charles Fort, as Calder reminded Petra on the way home, collected 294 showers of living things without knowing why. And that is where we are going to stop for today. When we come back tomorrow, I will have chapter 16, which is called A Morning in the Dark. I hope that you are enjoying it. It sounds like Petra and Calder are off to a great start at solving the mystery of where the lady painting is. I look forward to hearing from you all very soon, and I hope you come back tomorrow for more. Bye!